Broadway show in Chicago had him in it, it would be that. Thank you, V. For all that you are, for all that you give, for all that you bring, for all that you do, everything that you give, including these generous gifts, thank you. Please know that your board, your finance committee, and your staff will do everything in our power to make sure that this is used wisely and generously. So I'd like to share with you a list of similarities between Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy. This information has been verified by the researchers at Snopes.com, an organization that's dedicated to debunking rumors and misinformation. There are a lot of other similar lists that don't get the facts quite right, but all of these statements are factually correct. Both were elected to Congress in 46, Lincoln in 1846 and Kennedy in 1946. Both were elected to the presidency in 60, Lincoln in 1860 and Kennedy in 1960. Both were concerned with civil rights. Lincoln had the Emancipation Proclamation, and Kennedy had the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Both were married in their 30s to women who were in their 20s. Both were shot on Friday. Both were shot in the head. Both of the president's successors were named Johnson. Lincoln was succeeded by Andrew Johnson, and Kennedy was succeeded by Lyndon Johnson. Both successors were Southerners. Both successors were born in 08. One in 1808 and one in 1908. Both Lincoln and Kennedy had security agents named William, who each happened to die within 48 hours of attaining the age of 75 years and 5 months. Somebody did some digging there. Their assassins, Booth and Oswald, were killed before their trials and within the same month of the assassination. Lincoln and Kennedy were both killed in a Ford. Lincoln was shot in Ford's Theater, and Kennedy was shot while riding in a Lincoln Continental, which is made by the Ford Motor Company. It's true, though. As the choir rises, I'd like to invite the rest of us to remain seated as we sing together hymn number 391, Voice Still and Small. I would imagine that list of coincidences, little connections between Lincoln and Kennedy, wasn't really new to anybody. I mean, I think we've all heard it or seen it before. I remember that when I was a kid, and the assassination, even though I wasn't alive when it happened, the assassination of Kennedy was still quite fresh for all of the adults in my life. The list that circulated the most in my elementary school included really broad coincidences like the first letters of names or the numbers of letters in names. Like Lincoln and Kennedy both have 7 letters, and the first names of both Johnsons have 6 letters. And that kind of thing somehow felt creepy to me. Like numerology was controlling destiny or something. And the list was also full of misinformation. While Kennedy did have a secretary named Lincoln, Lincoln did not have a secretary named Kennedy. But still, there was something magical about that list. For many, it's captivating, and I think that's why after 62 years now, 63 years, it still circulates. Some urban folklorists have suggested that the lists have provided a way for people to make sense of 2 immensely tragic events in U.S. history. There's a kind of logic that comes from patterns, so the similarities make the events feel like inevitabilities, like fate. Martin Gardner, a mathematician, expert on Lewis Carroll, and one of the leading anti-pseudoscience polemicists of the 20th century, said that it's relatively easy to find seemingly meaningful patterns relating to any two people or events. Comb through thousands of facts of two complex subjects, and it's impossible to not find similarities. Look hard enough and you can find a pattern. Find a pattern, random as it may be, and it's not a huge leap to ascribe meaning to it. This is a psychological phenomenon that has a name: apophenia, the tendency to perceive order in random configurations. Experts suggest that most of us have a little bit of apophenia, at least now and then, and suggest that may be the reason for the enduring popularity of the Lincoln-Kennedy list. So I want to tell you a story that I heard recently, a list of coincidences and connections related, of course, to Lincoln. John Wilkes Booth, who assassinated Abraham Lincoln, was from a family of actors. He was considered to be the handsomest but least talented among him and his two brothers. His brother Edwin Thomas Booth was very successful and famous and is still considered to be the greatest American actor of the 19th century. Their father, a famous Shakespearean actor, famously pitted them against each other and caused all of the brothers to be estranged from one another. Robert Todd Lincoln was Abraham Lincoln's only child to survive into adulthood. Around 1863, Robert Todd Lincoln was on a train platform in Jersey City when he was jostled by the crowd and fell off the platform up against the train. Edwin Thomas Booth was standing on that platform, and he reached down and pulled Robert Todd Lincoln up seconds before the train departed, which would have crushed Robert to death. At the time, Robert Lincoln was grateful and Edwin Booth was humble, but neither knew the identity of the other man until well after the assassination, when a mutual friend put it together. You see, both Robert and Edwin remembered exactly what happened. They had very vivid memories, even if they couldn't remember exactly when it happened. And they both shared the story widely. After his father's death, Robert Lincoln went on to serve in the administrations of Presidents James Garfield, Chester Arthur, and Benjamin Harrison. He was serving as Secretary of War under Garfield when the president was shot 40 feet away from him. So it was the second presidential assassination he was present for. Robert Lincoln was also with President William McKinley when he was shot in Buffalo. That's 3 times in the presence of a presidential assassination. Now, both McKinley and Garfield were from Ohio, another coincidence. Now, my husband and I used to live in Ohio, and I served a congregation that was just 2 miles from Garfield's home. In fact, our music director grew up on land that had been part of Garfield's farm. Garfield also happened to be the only president who was also a minister. So after the assassination of McKinley, the third presidential assassination he witnessed, Robert Lincoln got out of politics, and he became president of the Pullman Car Company in Chicago. Before he started seminary, my dear Joe lived in one of the houses on the campus of the Pullman factory. Given all of these connections, it's astonishing that Joe hasn't been assassinated. Or at least wasn't a witness to an assassination. It's a really preposterous statement, isn't it? So, of course, I'm kidding, but when people notice coincidences in a world where everything is connected somehow, if we're inclined to apophenia, the tendency to perceive order in random configurations, we will see meaning. especially when it involves politics in times of turmoil, times like this. After pro-Trump activist Charlie Kirk was killed by Tyler Robinson during a public appearance in Utah Valley University in September, a whole bunch of people remembered a Nicolas Cage movie from 27 years earlier. In the movie Snake Eyes, a politician named Charlie Kirkland is shot by a guy named Lincoln Tyler at the Trump Taj Mahal with thousands of onlookers who all claim to have seen very different things, depending on their perspective. And the tagline of the movie was, get this, believe everything except your eyes. There are people who say that Snake Eyes was nothing short of a prophecy about a real-life assassination to come, which I find as outlandish as marveling that Joe hasn't witnessed an assassination. But in the aftermath of that real-life assassination, the left and the right have two very different stories to tell, depending on their perspective. In one, Charlie Kirk was a free speech hero defending liberty. In the other, he was a cold-hearted fascist with a disdain for empathy and a love of guns overall. And it didn't matter what we saw in that video that went viral. We were told by political leaders, believe everything except your eyes. And the same thing happened when Renee Good was killed by ICE in Minneapolis, and later Alex Preddy. Don't believe your eyes because images can be manipulated. Believe the stories. Believe the conspiracy theories. Those prone to apophenia, no wonder they see prophecies. All of this got me wondering, is this where conspiracy theories come from? Are conspiracy theories born of noticing a bunch of random coincidences of minor details during times of turmoil, then assigning outsized meaning to them? Weird. What does that mean? Oh my God, if I had planned that, there's no way I would have pulled it off. So are we just going back into history and looking at stories from the past for coincidences and then turning them into prophecies retroactively? Funny how when you go back to try to find connections in the countless stories that exist throughout history, you can find something that seems to foretell the future. There's so much out there in the world that you can find whatever you want. The Bible is full of stuff like that regarding the birth, life, work, and death of Jesus of Nazareth. A good annotated Bible of any translation is full of footnotes that refer to verses in the Torah, places where the stories or even just the language are similar. And the belief is that everything that happened in the past where similarities exist is a foretelling of the future. So anybody who studies the Bible really kind of gets set up for apophenia, for finding the patterns, finding the repeats in history. So that the old storytellers in this biblical view were prophets. But being a prophet is not about being a soothsayer, right? Soothsayers predict the future. But prophets absorb the whole big picture of their times. They take in mind the mind-boggling amounts of information and they synthesize them. They learn from the past. They plot the points of every turning point in history and figure out the trajectory that's leading to this moment. They're looking for likely outcomes. They're educated predictions. A real prophet isn't a soothsayer. A real prophet is a logician who connects the dots, each representing something that really happened, the details that matter, not the funny little coincidences. A prophet focuses on what really matters. Lately, I hear so much about the chaos constantly created by the current administration. This administration has bragged about their efforts to flood the zone, to create so much turmoil that the press and we, the people, can't keep up. Their goal is to do whatever they want and get away with it because people are distracted by something else. And they're very, very clear about that, and it's working. It's impossible to keep up. The other day, I realized that I have no idea about what is going on in Ukraine anymore. That's nuts. Another thing I hear a lot whenever a new war starts or the government gets shut down again, isn't this all just a distraction from the Epstein files? Maybe it is. Maybe it is all a distraction from the Epstein files, or maybe it's not. Here's what I think. What if the Epstein files are just one more distraction? What if the files and the wars and the ICE raids and all of it are just a way of keeping us from looking at the financial records of stock trades and other high-stakes bets being made before and after the planned chaos of this administration? What if the president and his family and his staff and the wealthiest Americans and sympathetic autocrats abroad are all creating this chaos in order to manipulate the financial markets like the New York Stock Exchange and the Nikkei Index? Create a crash, buy low, end the chaos, sell high. What if they bet tens of thousands of dollars on Kalshi that the president of Venezuela will be arrested and then have him arrested? What if they bet that the US will attack Iran or that Iran will close the Hormuz Strait, then make it happen and cash in, making millions in mere hours? If you have cash flow like that, who cares if you're in some file full of smut and exploitation? Your money and your power protect you. Oh, so here's a really wacky thought. What if the Epstein files aren't even real? What if that's a whole big con created by the people who are named in it as perpetrators to detract us from following their investment trail? If they make trillions while we're focused on this file, I don't know. I don't think that could be true. I don't happen to think that the Epstein files are fake, but somehow it wouldn't surprise me. Here's what I know. Gas prices and food prices are going up and some people are getting richer. Civilians and combatants are dying all over the world in escalations of centuries-long conflicts, and some people are getting richer. The US government is shut down, TSA agents are working without pay, screening lines are hours long, and some people are getting richer. All of it feels like they're trying to keep us distracted so we don't notice that some people are getting richer. You may be asking yourself right now what my point is. I'm not sure I have a point, honestly. Other than to say that I want to be mindful of what I'm giving my attention to and how much weight I'm giving to facts and ideas as I try to determine what is true and what I should do and how I should proceed in the future, how we should all proceed in the future. You know, when I started putting this sermon together weeks ago, Joe was in the midst of interviewing with 6 congregations in 2 states and 1 Canadian province, just in case. And I was sure, until 10 days ago, that he would wind up at one of the 2 congregations that would allow us to move closer to Peacedale. We were looking at houses in Cumberland and North Providence. I thought I'd have a 30-minute commute. I thought I'd be standing here today telling you I'm moving closer. But the universe, or at least those two congregations in Massachusetts, had very different plans for us. I'm trying very hard to not read anything into it. So here you are, in the position of having to begin the process of finding a new minister. As is appropriate, the board you have elected in this representative democracy are already at work gathering information, figuring out next steps. I have no idea what they are talking about, which is appropriate. I should have zero say in who my successor is or how they arrive here. But I want to say this right now, as is also appropriate. Be present to the process. Don't turn coincidences into conspiracies. Don't imagine that past disappointments are prophecies of what is to come. Trust each other. Trust the staff of the Unitarian Universalist Association. I guarantee you they want you to succeed just as much as they want Joe and me to succeed. Avoid apophenia. Don't make meaning from irrelevant patterns. Be prophetic. Be mindful of your past. Absorb the whole big picture of your current needs and challenges and synthesize them. Plot the turning points of everything in this congregation that has led to this moment and figure out your trajectory so you can reach the outcome that you want. This is an amazing opportunity to call an ex-person who's got skills I could never even imagine having. Somebody completely different from me who can take you into the next chapter in a new and different way and meet you where you are. So don't get distracted. Pay attention. Stay involved. This is an incredible opportunity to trust each other. Please rise now for hymn number 205. Amazing. There is always grace. And it begins with admitting what we've done. In Unitarian Universalism, we don't have a tradition of ceremonial confession of sins, publicly or privacy. But we do have a tradition of sharing with each other the things that cause us to cry out in sorrow or sing in celebration. So I'd like to invite you now to share your joys and concerns and this light that we take with us out into the world, sharing it with those we encounter on our journey. Please rise now for our closing song, and let's just stay put.